The metallic click you just heard wasn't a tape recorder starting. It was the sound of the last lock on Dr. Evans' containment cell, snapping shut from the inside. He'd spent 46 sessions recording what he called atmospheric disturbances. Faint whispers in empty rooms, temperature drops without cause, objects moving on their own. But session 47 was different. The air in the observation room grew thick with the smell of ozone and something else. Something sweetly rotten, like fruit left too long in the sun. Dr. Evans' voice on that final recording isn't strained from exhaustion. It's tight, with a terror so complete, it has reshaped his breathing into short, panicked gasps. He described a pressure building against his skin, as if the very atmosphere in the room had become viscous and heavy, resisting every movement. Then came the scratching. Not from the walls or ceiling, but from inside the recording equipment itself, as if something had crawled into the circuitry and was trying to dig its way out. What Dr. Evans whispered next wasn't captured on tape. The digital file shows 47 seconds of perfect silence before the recording ends. But the security cameras in the hallway outside his door captured every word he screamed before the lock engaged from within. The patient's words hang in the air, thick with the metallic scent of something unspoken. "I didn't mean to kill her," he said, his voice a fragile whisper. "But when she laughed, I just saw red." A primal confession, sticky with regret, now trapped within these soundproofed walls. And a therapist is bound by an oath of silence, a vow that can feel colder than any grave. She is bound by an oath that seals her lips, unable to report the crime her patient confesses. But what if his confession isn't for a past murder? A story he's telling? What if he's describing the details of her murder? And the most profound terror is that she doesn't yet know she's already dead. Dr. Alison Evans had built her life on listening. Her suburban Austin home was her sanctuary, a place where the only sounds were the distant hum of cicadas and the rustle of live oaks. But that evening, as dusk settled, a new sound emerged. A faint, rhythmic scratching from the crawl space beneath the floorboards. At first, she dismissed it as tree roots or settling pipes. But the pattern was too deliberate, too alive. Then came the smell. The damp, earthy scent of turned soil mixed with something metallic, like old pennies left in the rain. Her Austin practice thrived. Her marriage to David was stable, though subdued. Her world was one of measured empathy, guiding clients through their deepest shadows, then sealing those shadows away in her filing cabinet. A faint scent of old paper and ozone lingered in the air after the drawer closed. Narrator. Then came Mark Henderson, a software engineer who arrived 6 months ago, consumed by what he described as extreme guilt and relationship anxiety. He was articulate, remorseful, and seemed utterly dedicated to his recovery. The perfect patient. Alison typed her notes, the clinical words stark on the screen. Session 22. Mark reports progress. Expresses guilt over past actions but remains vague. Her goal was simple: build trust to facilitate a full disclosure. She believed she was helping him unpack a childhood trauma, or perhaps a burden of guilt from an affair. The metallic scent of old coffee lingered in the still office air, a familiar, grounding smell that masked the true, gathering dread. Her notes were a meticulous chronicle of his recovery, each entry filed with clinical precision, yet she'd overlooked the fundamental rule of any story: you must first identify the victim. At home, Alison prepared dinner, while the scent of roasting vegetables filled the kitchen. David turned a newspaper page. The rustle of paper, the only sound in the otherwise still house. The newspaper headline was barely legible. Local woman, Lucy Miller, reported missing. Alison's eyes flickered across it, her attention fractured. The first fissure in her reality didn't form in her office, but right there, in her own kitchen. It was a simple missing person report for a young woman named Lucy Miller, a name that held no meaning for Alison. Not yet. The session resumed, but Mark was unraveling, his hands twisting as if wringing water from cloth. His voice frayed, each word catching in his throat like a splinter. I can't stop seeing her face, Alison. It's there, behind my eyes, a relentless imprint I cannot scrub away. She's everywhere. Alison's voice was a gentle, probing whisper. The woman from your past? The source of your guilt? Mark's reply was a raw, fractured breath. She is my past, and my present. And if I can't fix this, she'll be my future too. That night, the stale scent of old paper and cold coffee clung to the air. Alison's fingertips brushed the pages, tracing the frantic ink of her own handwriting. A quiet, rhythmic tapping, like a distant, insistent signal, began at the window. She circled the word, she, drawing a line that connected the sessions. Her notes read like a slow-mounting thriller, the pronouns shifting from it to she. Vague guilt crystallized into a specific, haunting person. Alison's professional curiosity began to curdle into a deep, primal dread. Alison realized she wasn't just hearing a confession anymore. She was being handed a puzzle. In their next session, Mark stared out the rain-streaked window, his profile sharp against the gloom. His voice dropped to a whisper, carrying the weight of something unspeakable. "Do you believe in fate, Alison?" "Quote," he asked, the words hanging in the heavy air. "That some people are just connected?" Alison's voice came soft, like a confession in the dark.
I believe our actions forge connections, Mark. Some bonds. Resist breaking. Mark turned. A faint, sorrowful smile touched his lips. A ghost of what once was.
Yeah, he whispered, the word hanging in the damp air between them like a shared curse. Some vows cannot be broken, not even by death. The air in the room turned frigid and thick, carrying the faint, metallic scent of old iron. From the darkness beyond the light, a sound emerged. A wet, rhythmic scratching, like bone on stone. And there it was, the word death, lingered in the office's perfumed air. An indelible stain. Confidentiality constricted Alison like a straitjacket. She could only call the police if he demonstrated a clear, imminent threat. Unable to sleep, Alison sat in the blue glow of the laptop screen, her fingers trembling as she typed, Lucy Miller missing, into the search bar. The search results loaded, and her breath hitched as a social media profile appeared. There was Lucy, bright-eyed and smiling, in a photo taken at a tech conference. Seeing that vibrant, living image of someone declared missing, a heavy, unsettling quiet settled over the room, thick with implication. Alison's body locked in place, her breath catching in her throat. In the photo's blurred background, a figure emerged from the haze, unmistakably Mark Henderson. The missing woman wasn't some ghost from Mark's past. She was his present, a colleague, and in that moment, Alison's notes transformed from therapy records into a potential murder diary. Session 47. The atmosphere grew oppressive, saturated with a damp, metallic scent. Mark's voice was a strained whisper, his breath hitching as he confessed. I have to tell you, all of it, today, or I'll never get it out. Alison. I'm listening, Mark. The air thickened with the scent of ozone and old dust, a metallic tang clinging to the back of his throat. From the memory's edges, a faint scratching sound began to bleed into the present. The sleek apartment felt suddenly claustrophobic, the sterile air thick with the iron scent of anger. Lucy's accusing finger seemed to cut through the space between them, a silent accusation sharper than any shout. Mark's voice was a raw plea, stripped bare, as he confessed. We fought. It was about the future, he whispered, the words hanging in the heavy air like a final, ominous verdict. She wanted things I couldn't give, a family, a different life. She said I was empty, a ghost. Her words left a metallic taste in my mouth, like old coins and regret. The air in the room grew thick and stale, smelling of dust and forgotten things. Her bitter, mocking laugh echoed, stripping me of all work. Mark. I didn't mean to kill her, but when she laughed, I just saw red. Her own heartbeat pounded, the only sound in the suffocating quiet. The confession was out, leaving her alone with a corrosive truth. Her thoughts churned, a frantic scramble in the stagnant air. One question clawed to the surface, sharp and urgent. Where was the body? What was the weapon? But her professional ethics screamed louder. You cannot say a single word. The session ended abruptly, the air thick with unspoken truths. Mark, unnervingly composed now, offered chilling gratitude. Thank you, Alison, for everything, for holding it all. A profound sense of weightlessness settled over him, as if a burden he'd carried for years had finally dissolved into the stale air. The oppressive atmosphere of the place seemed to recede, replaced by a strange, hollow quiet. He took one last breath, tasting the lingering metallic tang of old fear, and turned away. Without a word, he stepped across the threshold and was gone. Alison sits frozen, her body refusing to obey. She looks down at her notepad, her breath catching in her throat. She has unconsciously not recorded his final sentence. Instead, the page bears only her own name, written in her own trembling hand. Alison. The name repeated, a haunting whisper in the empty room. Move on. The phrase echoed, thick with a double meaning. For patients, it's a conclusion, a door closing on therapy. But for killers, it's a final act, tying up the last, terrible loose ends. A glacial realization, more cutting than any blade, pierced her consciousness. Her meticulous notes, the perfect, detailed chronicle, were not merely a record of his transgression. The camera pushes in on the notepad, focusing on her name before flipping back through earlier pages. They were a blueprint, a pattern she had been meticulously studying. She was so focused on identifying his victim that she never stopped to wonder, what if she wasn't just tracking a killer, but something that couldn't be killed? But who was the she he meant now? Her breath hitched as she drove, the road home dissolving into a blur of panic and rain. Fumbling with her phone, she dialed David. Each unanswered ring was a hollow, metallic thud in the car's stale air. Silence answered. Not the quiet of an empty house, but a thick, waiting stillness that pressed in from all sides. The missing person poster of Lucy Miller seared into her memory. She burst into her house, met by a stillness so thick it pressed against her skin. Then, the fragments of Mark's unnerving questions about her life, her marriage, slammed together with violent clarity. The humid air, laced with the faint, coppery scent of old pennies, grew heavy with dawning horror. His obsession was with unbreakable connections, a fixation that went beyond therapy. The way he studied her held no transplants, but instead a chilling recognition of kinship. It was the look of someone who had found their own kind in the dark. In that quiet office, The air grew thick with the ozone scent of impending revelation. Her fingers brushed the cold glass of the framed photo on the desk. Lifting it, she saw her own smile, her entire life, through the warped lens of Mark's twisted narrative. The old arguments about children surfaced, now tainted by a creeping, oily dread. The breath hitched. The air grew heavy with the scent of old paper and a faint metallic tang. The oppressive stillness of the future felt like a physical weight, a future that seemed utterly vacant. A void waiting to be filled. Alison's breath hitched in her throat as she whispered, "Thank you, God." The words swallowed by the thick air of the study. She lunged for the old metal filing cabinet. The rust-scented drawer groaning open with a sound like a tune being breached. The fingers, trembling and cold, found Mark's file. She tore it open, the pages whispering as they turned back to the very first session, 6 months in the past. Her eyes traced the faded ink on the page, her own forgotten words materializing from the past. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with the scent of old paper and dust. She read the line aloud, her voice a whisper in the stillness. Patient describes his profound guilt regarding a failed relationship. Then came his quoted confession, the ink seeming to pulse. "I couldn't be what she needed. I failed her, just like I failed the others." The others. Plural, a final, suffocating truth descended upon the room. Lucy Miller was not the first victim, and Alison, by holding this confession, by becoming the keeper of his darkest self, had made herself the most important woman in his life. Alison peered through her window, the glass cool against her skin. Across the rain-slicked street, a sedan sat motionless in the gloom. Behind the wheel, a silhouette was barely discernible, a shape that could only be Mark. He wasn't watching her house, but the very fact of his presence in that empty hour felt like a violation of the night's quiet. He's just sitting there, waiting. He turns his head, slowly, and looks directly at her window. He smiles that same sad smile. The therapist, who thought she was documenting a confession to a murder, was actually documenting her own. Those notes weren't a record of the past. They were a dark prophecy, unfolding in real time. In the final session, the one that would seal everything, remains unwritten. The camera finds Alison's terrified reflection in the rain-streaked window. Eyes wide, breath fogging the glass, superimposed over her image. Through the distortion of water and glass, Mark's distant smile waits with patient, unsettling calm. The most dangerous secrets aren't the ones we keep from others. They're the ones others keep for us.